guys, welcome back to another Weird Wednesday. I'm Ashers and this is
Ivy.
So I got to do some adventuring over the weekend. So I was, as probably most of you know, I've been working on this documentary. And I spent the day in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, hunting a single Mothman. But I took my Dom with me, my Dom Ann, and it was fun. Did I learn anything new? Not really, no.
But did she?
She learned so much. I'm so excited to share about it. That's the thing with like taking new people down there, is that usually the first time someone goes down there with me, because I never go alone, is, I take them around the town, we go to the museum, I give them the tour, they get the basics of things, and so, usually that's how it rolls. We're going back next weekend, and I'll get into that shortly, but, anyway, so, basically the whole experience was it's just kind of getting a feel for the area. Sometimes you go down there and sometimes, things happen, or you end up talking to the right person and, it changes things or whatever. None of that happened this time. Like I said, I didn't really find any new leads. But I kind of did at the same time. So we go down there, we go to the museum, and she checks it out. She's like a kid in a candy shop. She absolutely adored the whole gimmick of the Mothman thing. Like, she fucking loved it. And it was adorable. And we were standing outside, kind of standing in a line to take our pictures with the Mothman statue. And her and I were kind of talking about it. She's like, yeah, it's a cool, it's a cool little thing. I don't believe in this shit, but it's cool. And so I was just like, yeah, okay, whatever. So after that, we left for a little bit. We got a Mothman pizza, and, I'm just kind of telling her stories about things and going more in depth with things. And, I was telling her about Injured Cold, and I was telling her about Woodrow Derenberger, and, I was just kind of telling her how I need to get a hold of, Woodrow's daughter because she's still alive and I could interview her for the documentary or whatever. And she's just like, oh, well, that's cool. And I'm like, yeah, the fact that his daughter has kind of carried on his story, because Woodrow's dead, I'm like, the fact that, she's carried his story means that, she must believe it. And why would you believe something like that? If your dad's talking about how he has this best friend that's an alien and he visits the planet, I mean, even as far down to as, he said he was impregnated by one of these things, like, and wouldn't you want to, like, distance yourself from that if you thought your dad was just crazy, So, but she's met Injured Cold, and she's met Injured's family, and they all get together for holidays and shit all the time, and I was just explaining that to Anne, and, she kind of got a little more interested. After the museum, shit gets real, and we go down to the TNT area, and she's really a big, like, history buff type of person. She's really into, like, government conspiracies and stuff. And so, when I started explaining to her, like, this is the area where most of the sightings took place, it was government owned, just telling her the background of the area and stuff, she kind of started getting a little more interested. Well, we're walking up to one of the bunkers, and beside your area, where the walk path is for the bunkers, it's like this big body of water, and it's just completely still. It's weird. It's just a weird area. So we're kind of watching the water for a minute. There's a bunch of bullfrogs, and they're funny, so we're just enjoying watching the bullfrogs and whatnot. And all of a sudden, we both see a deer. And, you see a lot of deer out there, but it's pretty close, and it was a clear shot for a picture. So Anne pulls out her phone, and she goes to take a picture. While she's pulling out her phone, I look at her, watch her pull out her phone, and then we both look up, and the deer's not there anymore. And she's like, oh, the deer's gone. And then she's like, wait a minute. Where was that deer standing at? And we both look off at that general area, and there wasn't anywhere for this deer to stand. It had to have been standing on the water. There was not ground where it would have, at least, if it was even going through the water even, and maybe the water's not that deep, you'd hear the water moving and stuff, and there was none of that. So we saw a ghost deer, I guess. And that really messed with Anne a lot. It really did. And she at that point she wanted to go. I mean, we saw one of the bunkers or whatever, and she wanted to leave, and I had my own weird experience, and I have them quite often down there, but whatever. So we left, and we get back into town, and we didn't end up taking our pictures earlier with the Mothman because the line was long, and we stop, and we're taking more pictures, and there's like in front of the statue, there's like a clock or whatever, like a town clock. Earlier, I had noticed some like church bells had gone off for like the hour, and I happened to look at the town clock, and it said 3:42. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's weird that the clock is wrong. But, Point Pleasant is honestly just a shit town. So, like, it kind of makes sense that their clock is off. But we were talking about going home at that point. And, like, I remember looking, we both, were looking at the time or whatever. And then the church bells start going off. And as we're looking at the time, it's 7:42. I'm like, that's weird. Why is the clock going off at the 42nd minute and not on the hour like it typically does? So so now 42 has reached a significance. So I don't know, like I said, some things happen. Anne has now, I wake up the next morning to this huge message from her, and she's giving me all kinds of leads. She's like, you need to contact this person, you need to contact that person. She is 1,000% sold on this Mothman situation now. So I don't know. I don't know if it was the ghost deer. I don't know if it was the 42, but it's weird. It is bizarre because she explicitly said, I don't believe in this. And then, now she's in it. She's like, let me see what I can find. Well, she might have family ties to Point Pleasant. So, and she's looking into that, but she's more focused on like the government side of things and like the shipyards, and she's curious. The shipyards are still used today, but they don't really say what they're used for. And so, but she's a great investigator to have. And next weekend we're going back down there, except we're not going to Point Pleasant. We're going for the weekend, and we're staying in Braxton County, which is where the Flatwoods Monster incident happened. So we're going to be exploring, some woodland aliens, and I'd like to go back to the TNT area some more, but she, I don't think she will. I think she's really uncomfortable with the idea of going back there. So she even asked, she's like, well, do you need anything else? Do you need to do anything else on Point Pleasant? I'm like, well, yeah, I just need to be there. Making a documentary, I kind of need, well, just like in the case of the deer, had I had a camera rolling at that moment, we would have caught that, but I didn't. So I don't know.
You just need to get a hat with a GoPro on it.
So I have this guy who is telling me that he's going to work on the documentary with me. And that's fine. I think he's vying for co-host, but I don't really know if that's what's going to happen or not. It just depends on a lot of factors because it is very much a job and I need him to treat it like that. He is going with us this weekend, and he purchased a GoPro today. So, we've got the GoPro, I've got my actual video camera, I've got, my iPhone, everybody else has cell phones, so I mean, hopefully, but the thing is like keeping them charged. You don't want your phones and shit to die in the middle of the woods. And then like the cameras and stuff don't have much of a charge to them. I have a backup camera for my video camera, so I can probably get about 4 hours out of it, and then I don't know about the GoPro. And then
power banks.
Well, right. Well, we can have those, and then like the fact that we can, we're staying there, we can go back and go back out, as needed. So, so hopefully we're able to catch some more interesting things. Of course, since the cameras will be rolling, nothing will happen. So that's probably what's going to be the case there. But I don't know. I'm hoping that this is done. Originally I was thinking that it was going to be out, next year, 2021, premiering at the festival. But this year I was supposed to have a booth there at the Mothman Festival, and the festival's being canceled. So, I don't really know what's going to happen next. Do I just continue with my plan and go next year and set up my booth? Do I really need to set up a booth, or do I just try to finish it for next year's festival and see if they'll take it then and show it at the festival? Do I still keep the original date? I'm just trying to see what, how this is going to play out exactly. But, in the meantime, we've had all kinds of synchronicities happening surrounding it, and I'm just trying to work through them all and figure out what all they mean and where they're taking me and stuff like that. So I'm sure I'll have more moth stories next week after after we go back down there again. So we'll see. But another fan of the moth, another moth fan has been created. And like I said, she's been way excited about it. So I'm curious to see what she finds. She's going to talk to her mom about their ties back to Point Pleasant and see, what that's all about. But I've got a ton of people to try to contact because I'm going to try to set up interviews while I'm down there this next weekend and all that fun stuff. So we'll see. But anyway, so Ivy told me to watch this show on the was it the last episode we were talking about it? I think it was. It was. Yeah. It was. So Ivy had mentioned the show talking about a doctor that basically was selling black market babies, and so I watched the show. The show's called Taken at Birth, and it's about Dr. Hicks and his Juggerthy, yes.
What was it? Thomas Juggerthy Hicks?
Thomas Juggerthy. Guys, this guy's middle name is fucking Juggerthy. And if you Google Juggerthy, you'll find nothing, really, but Dr. Hicks. So, I mean, maybe he sold babies because as a baby, he got to really shit into the deal with fucking Juggerthy. I was Googling articles on it earlier to talk about for the podcast, and I Googled Hicks Babies, because that's what they call the group, and all I could find was stuff on the show. Then I Googled Dr. Hicks, and the only thing it pulled up was like local doctors named like Dr. Hicks. So, because me and Ivy were looking at it yesterday, I typed in Juggerthy because the only thing that'll pop up is stuff about this guy. So, and it worked. Anyway, so this guy in like the 50s and 60s was, he ran this clinic out in, where was it? Macaysville, Georgia. And he performed illegal abortions there. And, because they were illegal at the time. But instead he would like convince these women somehow to carry these babies to term. And then he would quote unquote abort them and then sell them, on the black market. And so, they think he sold about at least 200 babies. But
all of them were like 4 pounds and some odd ounces too.
Yeah.
They were all small.
Almost all of them were preemies. And then, because he would induce labor and, have them birthed and then send them off. But sometimes he would tell the moms that the babies died, and then he would sell those babies. Now, it seems like most of them were supposed to be some type of late-term abortion, but, in some cases it was that they were told that the babies died. Now, I don't know. I was thinking about this. I mean, so they've been trying to find the original birth parents. It's this lady, Jane Blasio, and she's going around doing all this investigating because she's one of the Hicks babies. And she's kind of leading this investigation, and it's still ongoing. They're still reuniting these babies with original family members and whatnot. But because we don't know who all the birth moms are, because he would just get rid of their information completely.
He put the adoptive parents on the birth certificate, so it would seem as if they were the actual parents.
Biological parents, right. And so it's like, well, the parents that they have found, what if they're lying about being told that the babies were deceased because they don't want to look bad, because they were already going to have an illegal abortion anyway, because they were trying to hide the fact that they were pregnant, and so it's like maybe he didn't, maybe he didn't actually tell them that they were dead. I mean, I don't know. It's just a thought that I had, was that, it's a good possibility that those women are lying about that just to save face because they're embarrassed to admit that they were having an abortion. And
especially a late-term abortion.
Right. I mean, they didn't want to have that. They didn't want to have that judgment.
He was also, I guess there was like also some that were quote-unquote stillborn, but it's like that one lady, she had said that she heard her baby. So it's like, how could he cover that up? Yeah. Right.
He just was like, no, you didn't. And they were like, oh, okay. I mean, it was a different time then. It definitely was. And, you know, it, like, especially then, they didn't have the types of drugs that we have now. And, you know, they, like, he would put them under, like, a twilight sleep. And I've been in a twilight sleep before. And you definitely remember, like, it's not like you're, but then again, I don't know what kind of drugs he used exactly, you know, who knows. But they didn't have, like I said, they didn't have the advances to, like, knock someone out completely to do this procedure, you know. And so I don't know. I mean, yeah, she did say that she heard her, you know, she heard the baby crying, and he's like, no, and that was the end of it, I guess. And I mean, she went on to have another. I don't know. I mean, it's it's pretty bizarre. But you know, these people, they just feel so they feel so out of place. And that's like kind of another topic entirely, is just adoption in general. You know, most people that are adopted do feel very out of place. You know, a lot of them grow up with issues, and it's nothing that you can prevent from happening, really, because it's like, you could lie to them and pretend that you've had them, you know, you are the parents, but then if they find out, it fucks with them. And
well, and it fucks with your relationship too.
Right.
So
They'll never trust you again. Right. And so it's like, you know, but then, like, if they know that they're adopted, then they'll always grapple with the fact, well, why wasn't I wanted in the first place, you know? And so it's just one of those things that, you know, and these people that Dr. Hicks was selling babies to, they weren't good people. That's not necessarily true. Some of them were probably good people, but he wasn't doing any background checks on these people.
You know, he was just like, you got $1,000, here's the baby.
Right, here's a baby.
If you aren't here in 24 hours, I give it to the next person.
Right, and that was what it was. And so, you know, some of these people did end up in shitty situations. Well, in the show, you know, one of the adoptees, he talked about how horrible of a life he had, and you know, he was always treated like the black sheep because he didn't belong in the family. And it's like, why would you even pay money for a child you don't want anyway? But I mean, it does happen. My mom is a prime example of that. My mom was adopted. She was taken from her home. She wasn't adopted. She wasn't completely young, but she was taken from her home because of abuse, and then she was sent to a family, and they adopted her. And she had a sister too, and they adopted. Well, it wasn't her biological sister. They had adopted another child from another situation. And they had these two kids, and then ended up, abusing them pretty harshly. And eventually, they both ended up basically in an orphanage. They ended up in a children's home from a pretty young age on. And so it's like, why'd they even adopt kids in the first place? Well, my mom says that her adopted mom, originally they were told they couldn't have kids. That's why they adopted. And everything was fine until all of a sudden the mom couldn't have kids and started having kids of her own. And then she kind of lost her mind after that. And
well, I think at that point she probably saw the adopted kids as like
not hers
a burden
anymore. Yeah, right.
More than anything, because
right.
It's like, well, now I don't need you.
Right. And that's how it is now.
Up.
Yeah, like her adopted dad, kind of recently, he was in the hospital or something. He wasn't doing well. He was dying, and she doesn't really talk to any of them. But she knows enough to know that he was in the hospital or whatever, and she was like talking about how weird it would be to show up because those other kids would be there, and it's like, the fact that she refers to them as like those other kids instead of like her brother and, her sister. I don't know if there's boys and girls. I don't know what they are. But that's pretty telling because, that's how she sees them. I mean, just total detachment. And, none of these people are really family. She's since connected with her biological father, and she's got a lot of problems with him also because she just doesn't view him as a parent because, I mean, let's face it, he never really was. And so, so I know the kinds of things that these people are experiencing because I've watched it happen firsthand with my own family. And, like, in the show, they've, like, tried to reunite some of these people. Sometimes they want to, sometimes they don't. But you just can't really repair that relationship. You really can't. You're not going to view somebody as your parent if they're not your parent, if they didn't raise you. And that's just the way that
also,
is.
too, it's like if, he did, like, take this baby without the mother knowing.
Yeah.
If it was an induced labor and he's like, okay, well, your baby died or your baby was stillborn.
Yeah.
And then, like, 40, 50 years later, somebody calls you like, hey, you might have a illegitimate child.
Right, and you're just like...
Or I don't think that's the right term, but...
well, kind of. I mean, it kind of is. I mean, right, it's a weird... Yeah, right, it's a weird shock to their system. And that's what I was saying. When we watched it, and there was one lady that was like trying to reunite with her mom, and her mom really wasn't interested. And they kind of were trying to make the mom look like the bad guy. And it's like, but you know what? She went to that doctor to have an abortion. She doesn't owe you anything. She doesn't owe you anything. She didn't want to have you. And that's that. If she wanted to have you, she wouldn't have tried to abort you.
Right. It sucks and it's fucked up, but,
right. But
at the same time,
right, you're not entitled to any relationship with that person. You don't have to have one because...
Well, I mean, that situation was a little weird though, because they met up before like any kind of intervention with Jane Blasio or anything.
Right.
So like when they had met up, the mother was like introducing her as her daughter. Yeah. So I mean, I can kind of see like if she didn't true. Like if she met up and she's just like, this is
Kathy
friend, right?
Yeah, whatever.
You know, but the fact that she claimed her, I think that's something pretty major. So for her to kind of like pull back from it again, it's like, well, fuck.
Well, right, you gotta shit or get off the pot. I mean, make that decision.
So I mean, I can kind of see like where the child is coming from, but at the same time, like you said, the mother went through what she went through because, you know, whatever reason, whether she didn't want to have it or she couldn't, you know,
whatever
give
reason,
a good life or, you know, whatever her reasoning was, the fact of the matter is that's what she wanted to do.
That was her choice, right? And so that's what came down to it. So it's like, you know, yeah, I mean, if like personally, like someone called me and was like, your child is here, you know, which of course I've never adopted a baby. And, you know, unfortunately when I left the hospital, they gave me mine, so, I'm just kidding. But, you know, if I was called, or even by like a distant family member, I have estranged siblings all over the place. And so, like, if they want to contact me, I'm not against contacting them, you know, or being in contact or answering as many questions as I can or, you know, whatever, because I don't know. I mean, it's not hurting me to give that information, I guess. And if all it does is help them. So I don't understand, like, the one lady, her dad didn't want to meet her. And it's like, why not? You know, why not? Why wouldn't you want to?
Well, I mean, he's probably got a whole other life now. And...
Well, I'm sure he does, but just because you meet with that person and maybe answer some questions doesn't commit you to anything.
Yeah, but still, that would really fuck with somebody. Yeah,
that's true, I guess.
I mean, they're already contacting you. Like, if it were me and they contacted me, like, you've already contacted me, let's do this.
Right.
But I also understand, like, people, they can... like hear that, process it, and do what they want with it. But then it's like if they actually go through with it and meet this child that potentially is theirs, then it's like reality. Like it all just kind of sets in.
Yes, I mean, you know, well, especially in the case of the father. I mean, it most likely wasn't the father's fault.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure he didn't have. Well, he might have had much. You know, he probably had a little bit of say in it, I'm sure. And he's like, abort that baby. You know, so, but I guess it is still kind of shocking. Or, yeah, he might not have known at all. I don't know how they figured out who her father was. They never really explained that. But, I mean, I'm sure I could dig into it if I wanted to. You know, but, you know, while looking into the situation, well, at the end of it, they disclosed that one of the quote-unquote Hicks babies that because they've all kind of built their own little family now. It's kind of sweet.
Yeah, and they all meet up actually here in Ohio.
Yeah,
in Akron.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. And it's a very sweet thing that they all have accepted each other. You know, they've all finally, in a way, gotten that acceptance that they've been looking for so long. Even if they still have questions that aren't answered, they still have that sense of belonging somewhere. And because my mom says that all the time. People will criticize her relationship with her dad because, again, she was abused as a baby, severely enough to where she was taken from her family. And people are like, you know, why do you talk to him? Why do you do anything for him? Why do you help him and all? And she's just like, you know, nobody gets it. Nobody can understand at all, you know, because nobody else is, for one, adopted, two, adopted because they were severely abused, so it's like she's, she definitely does have that weird out of place feeling when talking about her dad and her situation. So, I get it with those people. Well, they talked about one of the Hicks babies, or whatever, was not actually from McKaysville. She was from Chattanooga, Tennessee. And so what they're saying is that this is a possible, another operation, and more babies that are probably out there that were sold and things like that. And that, that got me interested. So I decided to look into it a little bit. And, black market babies is a big thing. They're anywhere from about $5,000 to upwards to like $50,000 for what they call a custom child. And, it's still very much a big market. Now, more so in other countries than in America. But it happens a lot. And, they'll tell the parents, they're not really doing late-term abortion like that. They're just telling the parents that the baby's died, or they're stillborn or whatever, and they're taking them and they're selling them. And then other things that I feel like, probably we won't get another chance to talk about anywhere else is, there's people out there that have killed pregnant women and taken their babies and, think, or like have like walked into hospitals and, stolen babies and walked out with them. And, it's like, I guess I don't understand the desperation to go to those lengths to have a baby. Like the one case was this lady said that she was pregnant, or not pregnant, or she had like baby items, and she was on like, there's like local Facebook groups where you can, buy and sell things. I think Facebook has Marketplace now, so it's a little bit different. But before, people would just create like local groups where you could like post things that you're selling on the group, meet up with the people and buy the stuff. It was like a virtual garage sale. And so this lady was going around like posting that she had baby items for sale. And she was luring pregnant women to come buy them. And she, was kind of trying to pick one. And she picked one and killed her and cut her baby out and took it home. And what she did was, probably the biggest reason, of course she was caught. They did catch her. I don't remember if the baby made it, or I don't think the baby did make it. But the reason, her motive for that was because she had told her boyfriend that she was pregnant to keep him around. And so it's like, that's pretty horrifying. Yeah. I mean, that's you gotta be a disgusting piece of shit to do something like that. That doesn't even make any sense. You know what I mean?
I mean, she's committed, I guess.
Because, well, now she is. For sure. No, I mean, yeah, it's just, that's so bizarre. Like, but it's crazy how something like emotion and a lie can turn into murder, like it goes that far to turn into like murder and baby stealing, so it's like, and but that's kind of what they were talking about with the Hicks babies. They were wondering how many of these kids were his kids, and did he father them, and or did anybody in the family father them or whatever. The one lady, they found out she was the daughter of the mayor of the city. And, so obviously that happened to try to hide the fact that, he was having some type of affair. And so it's like, and then I think Dr. Hicks, they're still kind of working on identifying all of the babies and see if they are, see if who's his and who's not. I know that like it's come out that like at least one of them is his. And, there's a good possibility there's more. But then they have to find who the babies are. They have to find all the babies. If they're still alive, then they can DNA test them. But now they're getting old. Again, these are babies born in the 50s and 60s. They don't have a bunch of time to do all that anymore. So, I don't know. It's all it's a very interesting story. It is. And then like I said, that they do it in other countries. There's people that have walked in, taken babies, and walked out. I know when I had my daughter at the hospital, they put a bracelet on me and they put a bracelet on her, and they match up the bracelet, who anybody that walks in and out with that baby can.
Well, that was actually done because people were given wrong babies, or there was actually a case where the baby had like some medical issues or whatever, and it was going to grow up and constantly have medical issues, and they had paid a hospital worker to switch their baby with somebody else's.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
fucked
and
up. Can you imagine your baby comes out, you're like, I don't want this one.
Well,
Can I have that one instead?
Right. I'm pretty sure that when it all came to light, what had actually happened,
Yeah.
the family found out, and they found the other family, and they actually sued them for all of the costs of, you know, the medical
Sure.
needs and shit.
Did they keep did they keep the child after that? Have
I
they
think so.
accepted that child into their family? And
I think so, because I mean, at this point,
you can do right. You raised it.
the child was like,
How do you?
well,
learn
the healthy daughter or child, I can't remember if it was a boy or a girl.
Whatever.
Pretty sure it was a girl. She wanted to go with her old family.
Okay.
And see kind of like what it was like, and like they had the option to like, it was like a trial period essentially, and if she was happy, they could essentially adopt her because it's all legal shit, I guess. And she ended up not wanting to stay and went back to her other family.
Oh,
the family that wasn't hers, but the family that raised
That's
her.
weird.
Like, yeah, it was really weird. It was on some talk show. I can't remember what the fuck it was on though, but it was all so weird. But yeah, that's part of the reason why they implemented like the
wristbands,
the tracking.
Yeah.
But also because like there's like volunteers at hospitals that will hold the babies and stuff. Well, there's been cases where they actually steal the babies, so
they get attached to them and walk out. Oh, that's very sad.
So, well, I mean, I don't know if they necessarily got attached to them, but they might have just been like, "Oh, I can make some money."
Well, right, because it's a big thing. I mean, and there's been, I've read news articles where like people are, pregnant with their babies and they intend on selling them, and so they'll post like a Craigslist ad and shit for them, and it's just it's wild. And then like in other countries, like the one I was reading was like some lady was trying to like sell her 3-month-old baby for like 2 goats or something like that. It's like, it's so bizarre to me. It's so weird that life can be so expendable to some of these people. Then again, in other countries they have different I guess different sets of ethics, I guess. I mean, it is very weird. But whereas like adopting a child, which I think is really excessive, that shit is expensive. It is just ridiculously overpriced to adopt and then the criteria that you have to meet in order to do it is even more excessive.
Well, and even surrogacy that's even more expensive.
Right.
In vitro, that's like $20,000.
Right.
Like, who the fuck has that kind of money just
exactly
laying around?
Yeah.
Not a lot of people.
Right. It's just excessive for no reason other than to. So I mean, I can understand why people are selling the babies black market, because I mean, shit, we've turned adoption and child rearing into a business, and it's wild. It's crazy that we've done that, and it's like. I was looking into, in my younger days when I was healthy, I was looking into doing, like doing the surrogate mother thing. And, you get paid, I mean, gosh, they will pay you.
They give you, like, monthly allowances, essentially. They pay for
all your medical
doctor
bills.
visits.
All your medical bills. They'll pay for your food. If they want you working out, they'll pay for your gym memberships. I mean, it's kind of like a sugar daddy, but you're pregnant by daddy. It is. It's pretty wild. And it's sad. That's so sad to me. Those people are so desperate to have it. And people like that, if they're that desperate to have a child, that they're willing to shell out that much money, I mean, fuck. Just give them a goddamn child, Those people, And they've earned it. They've earned it,
What they spend in getting the child, they could invest into that child's future and that child's life.
Right, exactly.
It's just mind-boggling.
Right, and it's just like...
And that's like part of the, like, we have to make sure you're financially stable type bullshit. Like... Okay, well it would be one thing if they're like, all right, this is going to cost about $20,000, and they're like, okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
And then they go to do it, and they're like, just kidding, we just want to make sure you had $20,000.
Oh, yeah, you got it? Okay.
Like, no, they actually take their fucking money.
It's like a refundable deposit that you get back once you get the baby.
Right, it's crazy.
It is. It's wild. And, so people talk about, well, don't abort because there's adoption and stuff like that. It's like, well, there's not really, because there's a lot of people that can't adopt anyway. They're exempt, and, like, you can't be obese. Like, you can't, if you're obese, you can't adopt. And it's like, why? Why not? Oh, because you have health risks. So now you're saying that fat people don't deserve to have kids? Who decides that? Different things, like, different risk factors. If you have certain, like, genetic issues that run through your family, like, no, you can't adopt. Stupid shit. And it's like, and then, if you're a single person trying to, and that's another thing, like, most of the people that want babies are, like, single, like, they're unmarried people that are just, their time bomb, their time clock is ticking. They're older, and, if they don't do it now, they won't do it ever. But if you're single, you can't adopt. I mean, you can, but it's ridiculously hard. Like, and it's like all this other extra criteria that you have to meet, and that's just insane. It's just insane. And so it's like, so guess what those people are going to do? They're going to go buy a baby off the black market. And for whatever reason, the prices are still insane. They're really low considering. I mean, $5,000, for a child is not much at all, because then you've got people that are, in sex trafficking and stuff like that.
It's less than a car.
Right.
It's a human life.
Right. Oh, I can buy this baby and groom it from birth. Okay, that's what we'll do. And I make a turnaround on it. Yeah. It's, and then we wonder why we have such a problem. And it's like, because we don't want to fix the right issues. Like, we want to focus on all the wrong things. And so it's like, it just doesn't even... If people really knew, like, what a shit show adoption and foster care was, especially, foster care is just a whole nother... Anybody can foster a child, which is... Like, why? Why can anybody foster a child, but nobody's good enough to adopt one? Like, that's shitty as hell. Because they pay you to foster kids. Like, they give you money to have these kids. So it's like, most of the time, foster kids end up in a situation where... guess what? They have this child that they really can neglect completely and still get paid for it, so it's nice, I guess. But it's really sad. At least that's the way we do it here.
Right. It's like me and my brother, we were in foster care, and we lived with a black couple. They had 2 kids of their own, but then there was also, like, me and him, and then usually, like, 2 others. They almost always had, like, 4 kids at a time.
Yeah.
And, like, me and my brother were treated differently than the black kids.
Yeah.
And, like, they got, like, vouchers for clothes and stuff like that. Well, they would take our vouchers and use it for the black kids or their biological children. And we would go without, and I mean, yeah, that's just clothes, but, like, even when it came down to, like, food and stuff, like...
Right. It was like that.
Like, my brother, like, how skinny he used to be. I mean, he's all muscle now, but...
Yeah.
He was literally, like, 130 pounds.
Wow.
And it was because they weren't feeding him. They weren't allowing him to eat. Like, I remember this one time... Our foster brother, he was black, and he went to go make a sandwich, and, he just made a sandwich like you would. You put a bunch of meat, a bunch of cheese, whatever. You don't eat a sandwich for the bread, you eat it for the contents.
Right. Right.
And so Jonathan, he goes to make a sandwich, and my foster dad tells him, fucking, you can only use 2 pieces of meat and 1 piece of cheese. And it's like, yeah, it's like... kind of stupid,
sure.
But, like, you don't say anything else
to the other kids making
right.
sandwiches up in here, you know.
And like we didn't have as much freedom to do that either. Like me and Jonathan, we did all the yard work and like clean the whole house, and like they would all just hang out with each other essentially. And it's like, you know, it was fucked up, but at the same time, like, I ain't got nothing. Them kids ain't got nothing, so at least somebody's getting something, you know?
True. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I was in a foster home for, like, not even a year, and it was, I mean, it wasn't terrible. I mean, it wasn't great, but they obviously only did it, you know, because it was a paycheck. And, you know, they had 2 kids of their own, and they had 2 adopted kids, and they had me and my sister. And, but they did it because it was easy money. Now, my sister, they kind of got the shit end of the deal because they only really wanted my sister, but they had to take both of us. My sister's deaf, so they would get her disability check. You know, on top of that, they'd get paid for fostering. And it was just, I mean, they hated my guts, and it was just very obvious. Like, I never got along with any of them. Well, I got along with the brothers, but that was different story for a different day. But yeah, so but we didn't get along at all. They owned a church. We had to go to church every Saturday, Sunday, and Wednesday, and it sucks. It was awful. But whatever. I got to fuck at a church. So that was cool. I was like a teenager. I was like 12 or 13. So I guess, I mean, I wasn't really a teenager, but you know, my life's different. So, but it was, yeah, I mean, you know, but that's when I learned, like, how the foster care system worked. I never, you know, I was a kid, I didn't really have a reason to know anything about it, but that's how I found out. And, you know, it's a harsh reality, because I also went to a school, I think you guys have one locally here, but I had something different locally where I was, and I went to a school that was like a behavioral school. And
yeah,
so,
I went to one of those,
right,
too.
And so it was like, you know, a bunch of troubled kids, and a lot of those kids were also in foster care. Imagine that. And, you know, they all had the same shitty ass stories. So, like, I've never heard of one that was a good outcome for anybody, you know? And I'm sure they exist.
There's always the respite homes that were good.
Right.
I remember this one time I went to a respite home, and this lady, oh my God, I absolutely adored her. Like, her whole house, like, was set up for kids. Like, they had, like, I don't necessarily know what it's called, but it was like a bi-level, but only like half the house. Yeah. And it had like a big, like, tall ceiling, but like you could look over the railing and like see the living room and the kitchen. And the whole upstairs was just like bean bags and like toy mats. Like, she even had like arcade machines. But like, it was my 3rd time going to a respite home, and like, all the other ones were awful. And then like when she picked me up, I was like, God, it's gonna be the same way, because she like had this like crappy old Geo.
Okay.
And I'm just like, oh fuck, like, this isn't gonna be fun. But then she like picks me up, and she's like, all right, well, let's go get you some stuff. Like, she bought me clothes, bought me like toothbrush, toothpaste, like everything, because I didn't even have that stuff. Yeah. And so it was like really nice to have that. And then we got to her house, and it was just like, well, first when you walk in, there's this giant picture of her and her husband in her wedding dress. She had this like giant fucking train. Okay. And like, it was just really beautiful. But it was like seeing that, and then like her house was huge and like in the country, so it's like she's driving like a shitty old Geo, and then you get to her big nice house that's literally...
It's because she spends it all in the house, girl.
Yeah, she spends all the money she gets for the kids, and it's like, it was amazing, because like...
It's good that there's people out there that like that, because most of them are not, and so... And I thought about doing it. You know, and I still might, you know, later in life, and... You know, if I foster any kids, I definitely want to foster more of the undesirables, and, you know, because I know it's rough, and I know that, you know, they're difficult, and nobody wants them, so, you know, but I'm definitely not in a place at the moment to be able to do something like that, or invest that time into that, but, you know, I think it's my my experience with being in a foster home that makes me want to do that. But then the hard part about it is like, just like, because I foster animals, is, you got to give them back at some point, or you gotta let them go at some point, and that's difficult. Now I had a stepmom that my dad was with, and she adopted all of her kids. She couldn't have her own, and so I think she had 5, and hers were all fostered to adopt. And hers were all difficult case kids. Now, for the most part, I'm pretty sure they've all turned out pretty well, except for one of them, who they don't talk. I don't know exactly. I just think they never really bonded. And, she adopted him thinking that, she could put the work in, and he just never was receptive to the work, and I don't know, they never got along. And so, but other than that, I think it was 6 kids. I don't know, she had a lot. I think she did like 3 at some point, and then like 10 years down the line did 3 more. And so she would talk about how, like, the way that she had it set up was like she had the help of the older kids to help take care of the younger kids, and so on and so forth. So I don't know, but she had a system worked out, and but she fostered to adopt, and so that's probably the cheapest way to go about doing it. It's just, for some reason, a lot of people don't want to put in the work to do it. They want babies. People don't want kids. They don't want teenagers. They want babies, and it's like, okay, then you're gonna pay out the ass for a baby and jump through all these hoops to get one. I mean,
right, and it still end up being fucked up.
Right. No matter what. Right, because you're an asshole. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's like, that's probably the best way to go about it. But, either way, don't fucking buy babies off the black market, guys. That's wrong. You shouldn't, you shouldn't go for stolen babies. Like I said, it's almost impossible to do here. I know people can kind of get away with it because you can kind of choose a little bit. I don't know. I've kind of looked into, like, what would happen if I, decided I didn't want my child. It's like, what would happen then? And she would be passed through the ranks of the family, so she would have to be denied by her dad, and then she'd have to be denied by both of our family members. I think it's like immediate. Like aunts, if she's got aunts and uncles, grandparents, and then if nobody wanted her out of all those people, then she would go to somewhere else. At least, being older. But like if she was a baby, I could have left the hospital and dropped her off at a fire station, and that was that. Which is weird. But, I don't know why it changes once they get older, I guess because you decided to commit a little bit. I don't know. Either way, which I think is kind of fucked up. I think that, if you decide at some point in your life, I mean, yeah, it's wrong of you to decide that you don't want to have a child when they're, 2, 3, 4, whatever, 13, whatever, yeah, it is kind of wrong to then be like, oh, I don't want you anymore, go to this random weird family. I kind of still think it's wrong for the court system to force you to keep that child within the family. Because obviously something is wrong with you, and you're not fit to take care of a child if you randomly decide you're going to get rid of the one that you've already created and already met and bonded with, or didn't bond with, or whatever, this person. And so, but I think that would be traumatic for both you and the child. I don't know, maybe not, maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a child care expert. You see how I've done with mine, so she's not that bad. But everybody probably thinks my child's like the worst child in the world because
well, she just
always
acts
talks shit
out
about
when
parenting.
People are here. That's all it is. She wants attention.
Yeah, she's the center of attention. That's how she does. Just her. Which, she'll go places. She will. She'll be the president one day, but she needs to get her shit together to do it. But no, I just talk so much shit about her. That's just how I cope with parenting. Like the joke I make about the hot car. I'm like, I'll just leave her in the car. You know what? She's 8. If she can't figure out that it's hot and she needs to open the door and get out, then she deserves it. And that's wrong. I don't mean it, guys. I'm not a bad person. I promise. I try. But yeah, it is a very fascinating story. I do recommend checking out the show. Um, Especially if you're mildly familiar with adoption and things like that, because, you got two angles here. You got people that were stolen as babies, and then you also have these people dealing with the fact that they are adopted. I mean, that by itself is a whole other thing. And not just that, but these people are finding out at an old age. I mean, they're older. And, she says it all the time. There's not much time left to do this. Dr. Hicks, he eventually he was charged. He was indicted on charges for performing illegal abortions. And he agreed to give up his medical license, and they did not charge him with anything after that. So he did stop practicing. I mean, he's dead now.
Well, before that, he was doing some criminal shit. He was selling pain pills.
Oh, that's right.
And then
that's right.
He actually went to prison for it. And then when he got out, he worked for, I think it was a Tennessee miner company. And he was while he was in prison, he was looking into like a disease that affects predominantly miners. And so then he, worked for a mining company and was treating more miners than there actually were.
Yeah.
Got caught and was fired.
Oh,
so it's like,
so he's just got a long history of some
right.
shady shit. Yeah, well, right. And then is that why he took off to Georgia? I mean, I'm
probably
really not sure. So he goes there and he ends up, being an OBGYN and, is performing these illegal, and he would advertise on like phone booths and walls,
bus stations,
right, all kinds of stuff.
They even had a landing strip for like the big people, like with money and shit,
to come in, and I mean, he was really respected throughout the town. Well, we kind of see that in the show. We see her investigating, and it's just her at first, and she just goes into this little tiny town and starts asking people if they knew who Dr. Hicks was, and they're like, oh yeah, he's so great and wonderful. A lot of people have a hard time believing that he did anything nefarious. In fact, a lot of people think that what he was doing was a great thing. He was, instead of aborting these babies, he was giving them a second chance at life. And it's like, well, it just depends on how far he went with the aborting of with the baby stealing. Because, like we found out again, one of the children ended up being the mayor's daughter. So, he was probably paid off by the mayor, with that one. And then he was paid by the woman to have, quote unquote, have an abortion, because he would charge them too to have the abortion. And then turned around and sold the baby at a price. So, I mean, I don't know. If you don't think the guy's a piece of shit, I mean, something obviously wrong with you.
Well, there was that one lady that even paid for the stay of one of the mothers that was having an abortion.
Yeah.
So it's like he probably charged the mother that was having the abortion, and then also took the money from the parent that the person that was trying to buy the baby.
Yeah. So I mean, he was making good money. He was already a doctor anyway. It's not like he needed it. So, I mean, but he was willing to do it, and, so people flocked to him to do it, but, that's what happens. See, this is what happens. Let's get down to the meat of it. I mean, shit, this is what happens when we don't regulate abortions, when we just say, nope, bam, and we make them illegal, and we don't actually have rules in place to make sure that these are done the way that they're supposed to be done. Then you have people that are performing, supposed legal abortion, supposed illegal abortions, and then they're free to do whatever they want with those, with those babies. And so in this case, he didn't kill them; he just sold them. But in other cases, then you have, people that will sell the aborted fetuses in the black market for, stem cell research and things like that. So when you don't regulate these things, then you've got that kind of shady shit going on in the background, because people are going to find a way to do it. That's just the way it is. Doesn't matter what your stance is on abortion. If somebody wants one bad enough, they're going to get one. Well, then we have people which of course, she probably could have figured some alternative, but we've got, what's her name? Brooke Richards, was that her name? Brooke something. The girl in New Carlisle that buried her baby in the backyard.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody knew she was pregnant, supposedly, and she has this baby. Yeah, well, she said it was stillborn. Yeah, it was stillborn, so she buried it in the backyard. No harm, no foul. And she's, walking free, able to live her life the way she don't just, like, live her life the way, she's on social media, and she's, like, taking pictures with her in her brand new car, and all this other fucked up shit. And it's like, the theory with that is that the family knew that she was pregnant, and that they knew she was going to have this baby, and that they possibly intentionally killed the baby in order to conceal it, because they had some type of status in little teeny tiny New Carlisle, Ohio, and didn't want people to find out that their daughter was pregnant, that their teenage daughter was pregnant. And it's like, when you look at, like, that was like a case that I followed all the way through. And when you look at, like, the text messages and stuff between, like, her and her mom, and, like, mainly her mom, it seems pretty obvious. Because the doctor even called, because she went to the doctor, got a pregnancy test, she was pregnant. They said, okay, we need to set up an appointment for you, come on in. And the doctor either called or sent an email or something to the mom, which they weren't technically supposed to do. But the mom then confronts her daughter via text message and is like, oh, you're pregnant? She's like, no, I don't know what they're talking about. And she's like, okay. And then, like, 2 days after she had the baby, she took, like, a selfie of herself. And, like, she had a really bad eating disorder. And a lot of people think that her mom kind of fueled the eating disorder. Because she took the selfie and her mom's like, oh my gosh, you're looking so thin. It's so wonderful. And so it's like, her mom knew. She knew. And she had the baby in the upstairs bathroom of the home. And supposedly nobody heard her having a baby. Nobody, not a single person in the entire home heard her have this baby, for labor in the bathroom for hours on end, having a baby. I've had a baby. It fucking sucks. Like, you can't be quiet during childbirth. It's just not... It's not,
there's no modesty involved.
Right, none, no. You don't give a fuck about anything. Like, like, literally, your hips are being torn apart. The bones come apart from each other. And then your skin comes apart from itself. You rip and tear, and it's awful. It's a horrible experience. So, I don't know why people keep having them. I had the whole thing sucked. Pregnancy sucked. The whole thing fucking sucked. All the way through, all 9 months. Then I had her. Fucking childbirth was awful.
Right. It's like, by the time my mom had me, she was like, C-section.
Yeah, right. Just cut it out. Yeah. The first 3 months of even having a baby, it fucking sucks. They don't do anything. They just lay there. They're boring. They do. They just lay around. And, like, you're told that, like, your whole life's gonna change and all this bullshit. It's like, man, I wish somebody told me that, like, literally nothing would happen for the first 3 months of my baby's life, because I could have done so much. But I felt like I couldn't take her anywhere. I couldn't do anything. And she just laid there. And I'm like, okay. She'd eat and she'd poop and she'd cry and she'd sleep, and that was it. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know why you guys keep having them. And now she's 8. She's worse than ever. So
a monster.
She talks back and everything. She's rude. So anyway, but no, right. Shit like that happens though when you don't normalize stuff like abortion. And no, I'm not saying people shouldn't have them done as, like, birth control. That's absolutely not the way it should work.
Right, that's not healthy.
Right, but, like, nobody is using abortion as birth control. Like, maybe somebody has had an abortion because they got pregnant accidentally, sure. But, like, I'm telling you, they're gonna take measures the next time to make sure that doesn't happen again. Abortions are not fun. Like, it's not a fun, great, easy procedure. It sucks. And, nobody's doing that. So it's like, and I'm not going to get into abortions and things like that, but, I'm just saying we need the laws to regulate it the way that it should be regulated. So, and then we would have less crimes like, black market babies and, backdoor abortions and things like that. So that's what I think about it. I don't know. You got any more thoughts on the Hicks Babies?
Not really.
Yeah. It's a pretty... Well, it's not very cut and dry. There's still a lot to it. There's, like I said, they're still reuniting these people with their families. So I mean,
if they're still alive.
If they're still alive, or at least able to DNA test, they have the Hicks DNA now. So that, like I said, right now their focus is comparing that DNA to, well, it's kind of fun. It's been really fun watching the investigation breakdown, because I understand, because I'm investigating for my own, thing, my documentary and stuff. And it is a lot of cold calls and knocking on doors and, getting real personal with people that you don't know. And so it is very relatable. And especially when you're talking about things like that, when you're talking about really heavy subject matters. So I can relate to it all, but, as an investigator, I enjoy watching it. But I tell you what, that Jane Blasio, that is the most Karen-ass Karen I have ever seen in my entire life.
They've got Karen on the case.
They put Karen on that case. Yes, they did. And guess what? She's getting it done. She's out there. Karen's out there doing her thing. I'm shocked that her name isn't Karen. I mean, it's amazing to me, because like I said, she's
Karen Blasio.
Karen Blasio. It sounds. I mean, who would know the difference?
I think the best person in that series, though, is that one old lady. I've been here for 9 years.
I don't remember her name. Yeah, the oldest lady in the whole town, I think. I don't know if that's... I don't remember what the tie was to her, why they... Maybe because she was one of the oldest living people in the town, and... I don't know, but that lady, let me tell you what, she has found not only the fountain of youth, but she's found the key to happiness, because you couldn't tell her nothing to bring her down. She was so sweet. She had cute little braids in her hair. I was like, did she do those? That's adorable. She probably didn't, but I hope she did. I don't know. She might still be alive. They've started this investigation back in 2014 is when they started. And so, so she could be. I don't know if she is. If anybody knows if that old lady is alive, let us know, and we'll come down to Georgia and visit. I want her to adopt me. She would. She wouldn't know who we are. Yeah, just come on in. So sweet. All right, guys. Well, I think we're gonna go ahead and end it for this week. I've got this busy week coming up with the busy weekend rather. And one thing that I forgot to mention was that so maybe I'll have to push my weekend off. The conjoined twins, the local conjoined twins, their funeral is this Friday, and I might go to it. I think I'm gonna go. Now, I think they've done separate services for like family, and then they've done one for like community, because they're like local celebrities. People know who they are, and so I might go. But I told somebody about it, and they were like, "Why aren't they buried yet? Like, it's been a while." They're not wrong. I think they died in June, and their funeral is this Friday. So, I don't know. I'm trying to decide whether or not I'm going to do it. We're supposed to leave Friday to go down to West Virginia, so I don't know if I'll be able to go, but I'm going to try. But anyway, all right, guys. Well, we will see you next Wednesday. Bye.
Bye.